Support for this podcast has been provided by AllianceBernstein Investment Management and Research, making money meaningful.
One of our luckiest things that happened is that parallel to the time where we started to sell, there was a component shortage, component allocation issue in the industry. It was very hard to get inverters. If you are a small company that has inverters, even if you're not a proven brand, they are willing to take inverters from you. That allowed us, in the first months only, allowed us to ramp up production and to actually have revenues. Some of which people, I must admit, people bought the solution, not because they thought it was amazing, because they couldn't get inverters from someone else.
This is Startup Stories from the Startup Nation. My name is Yigal Marcus. Thank you for joining us. In this podcast, we'll meet the entrepreneurs who have personified the economic miracle known as the Startup Nation, the State of Israel. We'll learn about the culture which helped incubate them and their ideas. We'll learn of their successes and, of course, their failures. And we'll explore why it is that Israel develops some of the leading innovators of our time. Here are a couple of trivia questions for you. Question number 1. What is the most abundant source of energy in the world? Question 2. What is the cheapest energy source in the world? The answer? Solar. Last year alone, nations installed 98.9 gigawatts of new solar power capacity. In the U.S. alone, $17 billion was invested into the solar industry. At the heart of why solar power is attractive is its cost and the fact that it offsets 76 million metric tons of CO2 emissions per year. Now, since 2010, the cost of installing solar has dropped by over 70%, which explains its rapid global growth. Now, here's a factoid you may be surprised about. Which country leads the world in solar power? The answer? China. The United States of America is second, and India is third. But for all of its successes, solar power faced significant headwinds and inefficiencies along the way. Many people questioned its viability to become a ubiquitous power source, which brings us to an Israeli company called Solaredge. Solaredge was founded by 5 friends who worked closely together in the Israeli army. They happened upon an idea to pursue building a global company that would make solar far more efficient than it was at that time. And today, Solaredge is a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ with a market capitalization of over $2 billion. They operate in 25 countries and have over 2,000 global employees. And here's the story of how it all started and how they built the company. We're here today with Lior Handelsman, one of the co-founders of Solaredge. Solaredge is a publicly traded Israeli company whose market cap today is just north of $2 billion, and they've grown quite rapidly in the past few years. So first of all, Lior, thank you very much for taking time from your schedule to be with us. I know that you travel a lot. You're a very busy person, and it's a great honor for us to have you today.
Thank you very much. It's happy to be here.
So let's start just for a few minutes about you and where you grew up and your story.
So I'm born and raised in Tel Aviv, and did probably the normal, usual type of career path for many Israelis. My career started in the military, where I did many things, most of them technical, around electrical engineering. And where I met amazing people, and many of them are still my friends till this day. And at some point, while contemplating one position to another position, which was more senior, I was talking with a few friends, and we kind of like started to discuss what is better. Should we stay for one more role in the military, or should we maybe try out something new? And we decided that it's an optimal time because 5 of us were like in between roles, and we said that's a rare opportunity where 5 friends which worked together and we did many interesting things together are between roles. That's a great opportunity to jump out together and start a company.
So you were a technical kind of person growing up. And technology was a passion.
Yeah. I was always a technical kind of person. I always enjoyed playing with electronics and hardware and software. I was one of the first kids in Israel that had a computer. I was one of the first that had what was before the internet, a BBS service, which was a dial-up modem type of...
I remember those days.
Yeah, data service.
Very loud, very loud.
Yeah, exactly. And I was also playing with electronics since probably the age of 8.
Wow. Now, you actually got a BS in electrical engineering before you joined the Army.
So I was what's called academic reserve. So
Atuda.
Atuda. So basically, I did my BSc degree before my service and served in the military as an engineer.
And you wanted to do that from day one?
Yes.
Okay. So you joined the Army. You met 5 people who you worked very closely with.
Right.
And at the end of your, I guess you served in the IDF for 10 years, actually.
10 years, yes.
And so you finished in 2005. I guess part of that Army service, you also got an MBA from Technion.
Right.
And that was 2003.
Right.
So you served for 10 years, the 5 of you together, and you came towards the end of your service.
Yeah,
I guess
by then I was managing a bigger group. I was managing a much larger group. All of us were at different managerial roles. One of us was the head of the unit that we served at. At a certain point of time, we were all oscillating between various roles. And we decided that if we are all kind of like free agents at a certain point in time, maybe we should try our luck and form a startup. At that point, we left the military. It was a busy time, so we had no time to think of an idea while serving. So we left the military. We formed a company, not knowing what we will do. There was no technological idea. We said, we'll form a company and then
so you were a team in search of an idea,
exactly.
In search of a company.
Exactly.
You had no idea what you were going to do.
No idea, exactly. And we started to look for various ideas. We had lots of ideas. We thought of cool things around imaging, only to find out that they are already patented by some companies. And we were around so many technology fields, thinking of an idea, researching it, either understanding that there is no market need or understanding that a similar idea is already implemented. At a certain point, we've zeroed down on a solution to manage power sources in mobile devices, not necessarily mobile phones, but laptops and anything that has batteries and is portable. It was basically a programmable ASIC, a programmable chip to manage power in portable electronics. And it was quite unique in the way we wanted to manage power, in the flexibility of the architecture of the ASIC solution. We decided that's a good enough idea. We wrote a patent on it, and we started to talk to venture company firms in look for investment.
So you started the company without an investment.
Yes.
And then once you came up with the idea, then you said, okay, let's go try to get funded.
At a certain point, still, it was a very long process. So at a certain point, we took some seed money that was given to us based on the team, not based on an idea. So we found a seed money from people that believed in us, not believed just based on our past record.
Good investors, they say, good investors invest in the jockey, not the horse, right? They invest in the team and less so the idea.
So here definitely someone believed in us as a team, and this was our seed investment. And then with this idea of power management ICs, chips for managing power, we started to talk to numerous venture firms, and I must say that there was nobody was really enthusiastic. People said it's a very good idea, and technologically it looks very interesting and very novel, but...
That's code word for being nice. Sometimes they're like, it's a great idea, but,
Most venture investors just told us, very interesting, let's be in touch, which is code name for don't call us, we'll call you, or we will not call you. At a certain point, I met a venture firm in Texas which had a lot of experience in power management ICs. So this was this venture partner who
Which firm is that?
Seven Rosen. This venture partner, he already had a company that manages ICs, sold it to Texas Instruments, so was very, very experienced and very, very knowledgeable. And he told, look, the idea and the topology is very nice, very interesting, very, very good. The market is not a good market. You are in a market where there are very big players like TI, like National Semiconductors and others. And you will fail in selling your solution to the real big players. Back then, Nokia was a real big player, or Dell or Lenovo. You will fail because the big companies will not let you touch the big customers. They will always bundle their solution, and you will be this niche solution for power management that will be very hard to penetrate the big accounts. And at some point, the big companies are going to buy you out at a small $2-digit million figure, $10 million, $20 million. Do you want to work for 10 years and sell the company for $10 million? If not, go find a different market. That was
that was good advice.
Very good advice.
That actually changed your life.
Yes, amazing. And
how long did the process take for you guys to you were looking at a lot of different ideas, you were throwing things around. How long did that process take?
There were other things to do back then. We were spread around various ideas, but I think at this point we were already 6 months looking into ideas, or maybe a little bit less, but roughly 6 months. Came back to Israel, everybody except Guy, our CEO, which was the head of the unit, he was still on another business trip, also related to our ideas. We started to think of other markets, and we started to list markets which are interesting for our power management solution. Solar energy was, I don't remember the number, but it was way down in the list. Maybe it was 14 and maybe it was 24. I don't remember. It was way, way down. We had mainly because we didn't know it's a big market. In Israel back then, there was no solar energy. The only solar I knew was solar in satellites and aerospace applications.
But they do have the Dud Shemesh, the solar panels. That's not what you're talking about.
That's thermal solar. It's not photovoltaic. The only photovoltaic I knew back then was in satellites and aerospace applications, which is a very small market. So I said, I think we can do great things with solar, but it's such a small market, so we deprioritized that way, way down the list. And I remember that we divided number 1 and number 2 and number 3, and if you ask me what were number 1 and number 2 and number 3, I don't remember. Between us to say, okay, let's go do market research, let's go adapt the solution to these 1, 2, 3 top priority ideas. A few hours later, Guy landed in Israel. Guy already had some experience in venture capital back then. He walked into the room, he looked at the board, and he said, solar energy is going to be really big. If we have something in solar energy, I think it's worth looking.
And this is in 2006?
This is in 2006, yes. So basically, from priority something, we switched to priority 1, and it was amazing. We looked at the way solar systems are done. It's all taking the solar panels, connecting them in these strings, like connecting batteries in series, and then connecting these strings to a solar inverter, which converts from DC to AC. And in that decision to put the solar panels in series, you are losing a lot of energy, and you're losing the ability to monitor the system, and there are a lot of disadvantages. It's just very simple. You take this blocks of solar panels. Every one of them is a few tens of volts, 30 volts, 40 volts. And you turn them into a high voltage source, high voltage, high power, and it all goes to the inverter. And back then, all inverter companies were industrial companies competing mainly on one parameter, which is the inverter efficiency. And we said it doesn't make sense. It's the wrong system. If you would manage every panel individually, you could get more energy out of the systems, and you can add data and telemetry and safety and make the installation simpler and faster. And we saw that there is no good solution, and our power topology could be easily applied to solar energy. So that's what we did.
How did you vet the idea that there would be a business behind it?
So once we saw that it technically makes sense and that we can pencil in the numbers of the cost and the performance and everything like that, we wanted to see indeed if there's a market. No market in Israel, so we could not do anything in Israel. The closest major market was the German market. Even the US market back then, 2006, was at its infancy. But Germany was already becoming a major market. So we started to try and meet German installers, German module companies is panel companies, and other German players, research institutes in Germany and other places to vet idea. We had like a 10-second discussion. Should we keep the company stealth and develop a lot of technology before we go talk to these guys? And it doesn't make sense. I don't think it makes sense to anyone. As long as you're not talking to a potential competitor, but you're talking to a potential customer, and you are a little bit careful with what you say, you have to do it. We learned so much from these people that we met, and
I get that a lot. A lot of people, young entrepreneurs who have big ideas, walk around with NDAs in their hands, and I often say to them, "Look, no one's going to sign an NDA. If your idea is that big and you've got a good team, you're going to give it the chance." But
there is no harm in trying to get an NDA. Of course, there is no harm. In many cases, you can get an NDA. I've seen startups and companies which do not talk to the market because they want to keep the idea confidential. And that is usually a mistake. Unless you're a real industry expert, you spent 20 years in X industry and now you want to develop a new solution in that industry and you are an industry expert, then it might make sense to develop everything without feedback from the market. But if you're not an industry expert, and we were not industry experts, we knew nothing about solar energy, market and what goes on in the market when we started, the only way to make sure that you're actually developing something good is to talk to the market. That's the only way to become an expert. At a certain point where we were already a little bit more advanced, we raised round A. We already had a proof of concept, which we continuously worked on even before round A. We even took it a step further and we started talking to these companies and signing them on something which was called the design partner agreement, which basically says, you don't owe us anything except for feedback and guidance on the solution, and you must test the solution once we have it ready, which was
later,
a year and a half later. And in return, assuming we have a product in the market, you will get preferred pricing or preferred commercial terms, which is a very lightweight. They don't commit to buying anything, which makes it very easy or relatively easy to get them signed. And on the other side, they don't give a lot. They give knowledge and maybe testing a product which looks interesting. For us, it was invaluable. For us,
they didn't view you as a competitor.
No, because we did not go to inverter companies. They were competition. To them, do not go with a new idea to a potential competitor. We went to customers. Someone that if we had a solution, they would be a potential customer for it. And that was invaluable for us because we had design partner agreements to show investors these guys are being taken seriously by the market, and B, not knowing anything about the market, we had product feedback from market experts, which was invaluable. Actually, in order to get round A, we had our biggest, I think probably till this date, one of our biggest business dilemmas and product dilemmas. Our solution, the patent is around optimizing and adding a component to the solar panel. But then we had two product routes to take, which are basically two go-to-market routes to take. Whether we make this product to work with every inverter on the market, and now it is kind of like an add-on solution which can work with every inverter in the market. But then we need to do integration with all these inverters in the market.
How many inverters were there?
There were probably like 25, 30 different companies, of which the lion's share of the market was with 6. One of them was half the market, a German company called SMA. What we wanted to do, we wanted to develop the whole solution. Develop the optimizer part and the solar inverter, which makes it a much, much more complicated company. We now need to develop also a solar inverter, which is a big piece of electronics, and be able to sell it to the market with after-service sales and support, and basically compete with these inverter companies. And at that point, it was very hard to find investors. This was just before round A, and most of the investors we spoke to were leaning on develop a component. We've heard things like Israeli companies are not good industrial companies. They are not good in selling a solution. Israeli companies are not good in doing marketing and sales and after service sales and all of that. Develop a small component and then go convince all the inverter companies to work with you. Way less risk. And we didn't see it like that because we actually saw it the other way around. We thought that it's a bigger risk. Why is it a big? Technologically, yes, it's a much smaller risk. Instead of developing this huge system, you develop just one component. The risk is much smaller.
Now, this was what year? So you launched the company in 2006.
No,
but
so this was already 2007, around the mid of 2007.
Okay, so we're approaching the crisis. I mean, about a year before the
more
crisis.
than a year before.
Okay. So you didn't have a problem yet at that point raising money?
No. People wanted to invest in solar energy back then. It was a problem of go-to-market. We wanted to develop the whole system and become a real player in the market. And they said, develop a component, which is much less risk on the R&D side. And also a simpler go-to-market in the sense that once you find 1 or 2 or 3 inverter companies to run with you, they are pushing your product to the market. So you don't need to develop sales and marketing and support and manufacturing. Everything seems easy. And you also have a clear candidate for buying you later. Assuming this works well, one of these companies is the natural candidate to buy you. And we wanted to be a much larger company. We wanted to be a market player. And most of all, we did not feel that we saw this as a bigger risk because there are like 6-10 large players. And what happens if they all say no? So you develop a component, you go preach to these 6-10 companies, they all say no. And now you just lost maybe a year, maybe 2 years, and you're stuck. You have no access to the market. It was actually not trivial to find investors that were willing to, because we felt that the technology risk, we develop X or we develop 5X of technology. Technology is what we know how to do. There was a risk in building manufacturing capabilities and marketing and sales, of course, but we felt that the bigger risk is in finding a partner, an OEM partner to take us to the market. Eventually, we found investors that were willing to do it our way. We had an investment offer from at least 1 or 2 venture firms that said, abandon your megalomaniac plans and we will invest in the company, but I must say that we insisted.
Because that would have been a much easier path, right? You had people willing to offer you money. It would, in their mind, it was lower risk, but you were insistent.
Yes, and here it helps
which turned out to be a great move.
it turned out to be, you never know. It's like Schrodinger's cat, right? You never know. Once you went one path, you never know where the other path would have taken you. But we kind of can guess because there were apparently a few months even later, or a year later, we learned that there are other companies working on similar ideas. You never have it's rarely that you think of something that no one else thinks of. So there were other companies with similar optimization ideas. All of them went the OEM track. And none of them succeeded. Now, again, you can never know. Maybe we could have succeeded in that track, but most of them that didn't succeed exactly from what we were afraid of. None of the existing incumbent inverter companies would integrate with them. They felt we don't have a problem. This is maybe solving a problem for someone else, but not for us as an inverter company. It adds complexity. We don't want it. We didn't have that problem. We had many other problems, but we didn't have that problem because we had our own inverter. So we had an independent channel to the market, which was very good for us. And then when we actually had the product, came probably the first or the second opportunity where luck showed, because luck is super important. And no matter what someone tells you about their success, without luck there is no success.
Gotta have a little muzzle.
Yeah, so one of our luckiest things that happened is that parallel to the time where we started to sell, there was a component allocation issue in the industry. It was very hard to get inverters. And if you are a small company that has inverters, even if you're not a proven brand, if companies cannot get inverters, and there was a boom in solar systems back then, they are willing to take inverters from you. That allowed us, in the first months only, to ramp up production and to actually have revenues. Some of which I must admit, people bought the solution, not because they thought it was amazing, because they couldn't get inverters from someone else.
They didn't have a choice.
Luck. You need luck muzzle. Always. Exactly. And we were lucky enough also that they liked what they got. And many of these companies stayed as customers even when they could get inverters from others because they saw the benefits.
Now, just going back to sort of more towards the beginning, you were 5 people in pursuit of this solution for the solar industry.
Right.
How did you guys divide and conquer your responsibilities? I mean, you're early on. The most important thing was developing a product.
Right. So it was easy to determine who's the CEO. Guy was our boss at the military. He was...
Some things never change.
Yeah, no, and he's older, and he's more experienced, and he's super smart. It was very easy to say Guy will be the CEO. There was no dilemma there. Between us, we were all technical people. In fact, from the entire team, the only one with power electronics experience was me. Initially, we just all developed, right? So everybody works in the lab, and I was leading more of the power side, and the others did contribute. So everyone developed. It was a equal share of everyone doing the development. At some point, when we needed to find these design partners, we needed to decide who's going to take on the more external business development, market side of things. And here, do you know what's the difference between an introvert engineer and an extrovert engineer?
Nope.
So an introvert engineer, when he talks to you, he continuously looks at his shoes. And an extrovert engineer, when he talks to you, he looks at your shoes. So
I like that. I'm going to use that.
Within the team, I'm the extrovert engineer. So it was clear that I have more of a tendency and ability to talk to customers and to do business development.
Because it's interesting. You guys were tech people,
right,
in the Army,
right,
with no sales experience, no marketing. I mean, you run marketing for the
marketing,
for the
product at that point, also sales. Yes.
Sales.
Yeah.
You had none of that experience. You were just 5 guys that had,
right,
good working relationship.
I I work with many startups, and I tell them that when they recruit people, they need to remember the rule that the only people that are allowed not to know what they're doing are the founders. So I tell them, if you recruit someone for sales, make sure he's a sales expert, because you probably don't know. Make sure he knows more than you about sales. So yes, we had the luxury of being founders, so we had to learn. Within the team, I was the extrovert one more, so I went and did the business development, product definition, market requirements, marketing, initially sales also. And Guy was the CEO, and the rest of the team was divided within the different various technical tasks. So that's how we divided.
So you fell into this wonderfully lucky situation of where the world needed inverters. You guys had designed and built your own. You were selling those and generating revenue.
Right.
Your first year of generating revenue, how'd you guys do?
So first of all, once we had real sales, the minute we had real sales, the first person we went and recruit was a professional in selling. Right, okay. So it was clear that if we want to grow, it is as much as I think that founders are great, we needed professionals. So the first person we went out and recruited was a professional sales guy to build our sales and marketing organization, and that was a great contributor to actually selling in the first year. It's not like for the first, it was irresponsible even for the first months not to have a sales professional.
You manufacture here in Israel?
Initially, yes. We started by manufacturing here in Israel, in a contract manufacturer here in Israel. And at some point, we moved out to bigger factories around the world.
Did you outsource that, or you did it yourself, the manufacturing in Israel?
So all of our manufacturing is outsourced to contract manufacturers. From the very beginning, it was clear, and even clearer today, we control and define everything. We define, of course, the components and the BOM and the manufacturing process and the tools even and the processes in the factory. We make the testing equipment and to some point even the manufacturing equipment. We just outsource the labor to a contract manufacturer. The labor and building, right? So we don't own the building, but in many cases, we even own the machinery on the production lines. So yes, it was outsourced. It's still outsourced to large CMs around the world.
So what was your revenue that first year?
I'm trying to remember. So don't...
It's just I'm curious. Millions?
Millions, yes. Millions, yes. But I just don't remember if it was 10 million or 12 million or 8 million, but something around that, 12 million.
And that was, again, 2000 and...
That was 2010. The first year of revenue, real revenue, was... first sale was in July or June 2009. A real year of selling where we had a sales professional and actually selling... was 2010.
So you raised your first round of capital
2007.
So you had about 2 years of development or
2 years of development, and we had another round in between, which was right on the rough spot. So we did I clearly remember we did a technological demo in Munich for many companies in the market in June 2008. And when we brought potential customers back then to the demo, in between every potential customer, we brought a potential investor because we were close to opening another investment round. And everybody were interested because they could see, here goes this big customer and here goes that big customer and here's a working system. And everyone said, once you start a financing round, call me. We actually plan to start financing round at October 2008, which was...
That was not a very good time.
No. It was a very bad time.
The worst time, actually.
The worst time. It was very complicated. Many of the venture firms would not dare call money at that time. I still have somewhere here the business card from Lehman Brothers Venture Capital, which...
Alehem Shalom.
Yeah, exactly.
Rest in peace.
It was complicated to find an investor. It was a little bit touch and go back then. So we didn't have to fire people, but we reduced the burn rate to minimum levels, and it was kind of like starting to contemplate what we will do, because in 2 months, 3 months, we were running out of cash. But we found an amazing investor, Vertex Capital, and had a very good and large $23 million round B. And
that was when again?
That was, I think, February or March 2009.
Okay. They really did save you.
They were excellent investors. I think that they don't regret investing in Solaredge.
When you were out, I mean, I guess you didn't have too many choices, but what did you look for in an investment partner?
It's always the same, okay? And it's true for all of our investors. You look for a company that can be with you for the long run. Okay, so it's an investor which is big enough, serious enough, with a fund that is not too exhaust, because it was clear that round A and round B are not going to be enough for what we were aiming. We were aiming for a large company selling $1 billion, and for that you need
deep pockets.
And also patience, okay? You don't want an investor that would, within 2 years, become impatient and want to see a fast exit, because we were not looking for a fast exit. And the other thing is that you want an investor firm, an investor partner that can actually bring you value. You want to get money from someone that when that person sits on your board, they are wise and they can give you experience, advice, good contacts, good networking.
In what way specifically did Vertex, aside from the money, Vertex, sorry, aside from the money, in what way did Vertex help you build a company?
So all of our investors, once they invest, they add a representative to the board, and the board is a valuable source of advice and guidance and experience. And again, you need investors that when is your investor being tested? When things are not going so well. So very nice to sell, but there were tough years. 2012 or 2011, 12 was a year referred to as the solar corridor, where the solar market was very, very, very competitive. Many companies went out of business. It was very tough. At a year like that, you want investors that have patience and endurance and believing in the company and the team, and also give you good advice when they think that you're doing something wrong. An investor that at that point becomes either hysterical or tries to look for the fast exit or relays the frustration which is shared between you and the investor on what's going on in the market and relays that frustration on you, that's not the best investor you can have. Understanding, of course, that sometimes the management team can make mistakes. You want an investor that can highlight that without too much escalation.
Right.
So I can say that for all of our investors along the way, that they were great and they helped us, and it's important to marry the right people and to marry the right investors.
For our listeners who may not be as knowledgeable about the space, can you describe, like, in a very basic term, what Solaredge does?
Yes. So first of all, today we do much more, but let's start with the very basic. Solar panels, again, you can think of them as batteries. They emit DC voltage. And that DC voltage is relatively low, but in order to connect to the actual electricity grid, you need higher DC voltage, and that higher DC voltage you need to convert into AC. So the basic solution, the incumbent solution that was in the market before Solaredge was, let's take these solar panels, connect them in strings of 10 or 12 solar panels, and then parallel strings. So think of it like powering your remote with 100 batteries instead of 2 batteries. And now take all that power and voltage and connect it to the inverter. The inverter does two things. First of all, it brings the panels to the right working point, because only at the right working point you get maximum power. And second, it converts from DC to AC. Before Solaredge, all inverter companies, the competitive edge was efficiency. The best inverter in the market in 2006 had 96% conversion efficiency. So 4% goes to waste and 96% goes into the grid.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, very good. And there were 95 and 96.5, and that was the main competition. What's a good inverter? I have a 96% conversion efficiency inverter. What we saw is once you take all these panels, you connect them in series, you kind of get the Christmas light effect. If you have one panel which is weaker than the other because it's shaded or soiled or just manufactured weaker, it reduces the production of all the rest. And if you have several of these strings in parallel, it even affects other strings. And not only that, again, think of the remote example. If I give you a remote control with 100 batteries and I tell you that one of them is bad, how can you find the bad battery? Very hard. Now you have all these panels on the roof. You have absolutely no idea if they're working and how they're working and who's faulty and who's weak. So we realized that when you go this way, yes, you get 96% of the energy that get into the inverter out the other end, but you keep 10-20% of the potential energy these panels could have made on the roof because of this serial connection and this structure. Very simple structure, but also very foolish system-wise. So we invented this small solution, which is called the power optimizer. It sits behind every panel, and it makes sure that every panel gives you the optimal for that panel. They are not affected anymore by the other panels, even though they are connected in strings. And it gives you data and telemetry on the performance of every panel. And
so if one panel wasn't performing well, you know about it.
Yes.
You don't have to check those batteries.
We developed this cloud solution that connects to the inverter and gives you a full visibility on your solution. And you can even shut down the panel, which, why would you want to shut down the panel? Actually, it's a very important safety feature for installers, because it's high voltage,
makes sense. Yeah.
Which comes from the sun. You cannot shut down the sun, so you cannot shut down the system. It's dangerous for installers and dangerous for firefighters. Once it becomes dangerous for firefighters, fire insurance premiums go up. It's all bottom line money. So it saves maintenance, and it makes the installation simpler. I won't go into why. And it gives you anything between 2 to 25% added energy from the system. And you still need an inverter to go AC, but that inverter can amazingly be much simpler now because some of the heavy lifting is done on the roof. So we invented this system, which is an inverter, which is a web-connected inverter that goes to a cloud solution and the optimizers on the roof. And when you go Solaredge, back then it was only Solaredge, when you go Solaredge, you get a safer solution, a cheaper solution, added energy solution, better maintenance solution, easier to install, better roof utilization, many advantages. Today, we are the largest inverter provider in the world.
How many panels do you have that you're on?
More than 30 millions already. So we now at approximate rate, we are a public company, everything I say, that
of course.
There's a lawyer somewhere listening, but approximately 1 million of these optimizers every month that we make.
Wow.
We're the largest inverter provider worldwide. Other companies already have went this solution. This solution is now referred to as module level power solution for systems, which is now probably, I don't know the exact number, but a large percentage of the market is already module level solution, aiming for most of the market in the foreseeable future, because it is a better way. In the US market, which is a very large market, Solaredge alone, let's take the US residential market, which is more than 1 gigawatt a year of solar systems, Solaredge alone is 50% of the market.
Wow.
Wow. So because it's a good system, it's a good solution. And more and more companies are adopting this solution. we needed the ability to sell inverters in the beginning in order to be able to prove to the market how good an idea it is. Now we sell inverters because we are a large inverter company, okay? Much of our revenue comes from the inverters. But without that decision to develop also the inverter and have direct access to the market, it's very hard to prove how good this solution is. That's why...
Now, does that remain your core business today?
So inverters have evolved since when we started. In the beginning, inverters were exactly what I said. Let's convert from DC to AC, feed the power to the grid, and be done with it. And that was great because solar energy was such a small power source in the total mix of power on the grid. So solar systems, you just feed energy into the grid and the grid will manage. Today, solar energy is a very large power source. Even there are days in Europe where 100% of the power comes from renewable and a big part of the power comes from solar.
I actually saw a statistic published by the Solar Energy Industries Association that says that in the past decade, the solar industry has grown annually by an average of 59%.
Right, because
that's crazy growth.
Yeah, because solar is the energy source of the future, and our grid is built in a way today that you have to generate power exactly as much as we consume power. There's almost no storage on the grid, so which means that this situation where solar systems feed all the energy they can make, which is midday, the grids cannot sustain that anymore. Utilities are saying, you have solar energy, great, but we will not take your power midday because we don't need it midday. We need it in the evening, we need it sometimes also midday, but not all the time we need all the solar power that you can give. That made a real shift in inverters. And now inverters also manage local storage, so we sell now storage systems. If I'm not at home...
So you manufacture storage as well?
So up until now, we were selling the system control, and the battery it comes from a partner. Today, one of our partners is LG Chem, and we sell with several batteries because solar and storage are becoming one. With the reduction in battery price, EV cars, mobile phones. So one way to prevent, to be one with the grid is to manufacture energy, store it, and use it when you need it. Another way which our inverters can do, they interact with the home energy management. And if I have excess solar power, I can heat water because you're going to need hot water when you come home in the evening, or I can schedule tasks which are not, it's very hard to schedule washing your laundry because you need to preload the machine, but it's much easier to schedule, the pool pump.
Right.
Or pre-cool your home with the air conditioning, and in a way that will better utilize energy to be used locally rather than just feed it into the grid. So inverter systems have become much more complicated now. They interact with the grid, they interact with storage and with energy appliances and with several other systems in a way that works in balance with the grid. So it's much more complicated now. To that point, and since storage is becoming such a big thing of solar, we've recently acquired a South Korean company which is a maker of lithium-ion cells. As a natural growth, solar and storage are becoming one. And even solar inverters today are interacting through cloud services to form what is called a virtual power plant. So if the grid needs support in frequency or in power, then utilities can now interact with a group, with a hive of solar systems as a virtual power plant through a cloud service that we can also provide. So this is all steps in solar energy becoming the dominant source of power on the grid, which will probably take tens of years, but that is the direction.
Obviously, the company today is... you did an IPO in 2015.
Right.
This is, I guess, 4 years after your first real revenue, right? 2011, 2012 is when you first started generating revenue. Your valuation at the IPO was $778 million.
Right.
IPO versus being acquired. What was your thought there?
No, we do not want to be acquired. We never wanted to be acquired. Even if that was an option, it was not an option. It was always the intention to form a large, international, successful company that would outlast us. That was always the intention. Therefore, IPO was a necessary step in that route because we have venture capital investors that need a venue to cash out on their investment, and once you go public, you raise money from the public, which you can leverage to acquisitions and growth and so on. So yes, we IPO'd in March 2015. Valuation of, again, I like round numbers, which makes me a bad finance person. So roughly 800 million. As you said, today it's roughly 2 billion, and
your investors are very happy.
I would imagine so, right? So there was even a point where we were close to 4 billion, right? So
right,
it oscillates with, the trade war changes thing and many geopolitical things affect the stock market and
things out of your power,
Yeah,
right?
we really don't try to manage the stock price. We manage the company. We look to the future. We do things that we believe will bring value to the company and subsequently to the investors in the long term, right? So we hear a lot of advice on do this and the stock price will go up, do this. And we think that our way, which is consistently or almost consistently beating market expectations and keeping the company profitable, and we've been profitable even before the IPO, not just revenue generating, profitable even before the IPO, and in keeping that profitability and growth, in our view, is the way to bring value in the long term.
How has your management burden changed since it became public? Or has it?
So, of course, it adds. Once you go public, there are additional things that management needs to do as a public company, right? So there are, of course, more corporate governance and more corporate policy, which eventually is more work. And there's, of course, some of us need to handle investor relations, and there's the annual... we've been doing audited reports internally years before the IPO because we wanted to be ready. But it is still different to have an audited report when you're a public company and a non-public company with the earning release and all of that. I'm not sure that being public is the major step. The major step is now, as we acquire companies and we grow non-organically, then there's a lot more of management burden in managing that.
Where do you think this company is going to go in terms of, I think 10, 20 years out?
Hearing the corporate lawyer in my ear saying no forward statements are allowed as a public company, you should be...
It's fair.
No, but 10, 20 years, I think it's fair to say that we aim and we believe that we can become a major technology provider in the energy world, right? With the acquisition of Kokam, the South Korean lithium-ion company. And since then, we've made two other acquisitions, or we also made two other acquisitions. One is an asset acquisition of an Israeli company called Gamatronic, which is a UPS provider. There are a lot of technological similarities between solar inverters and UPS. And that acquisition is the nucleus of a division which we are building for a UPS division. And most recently, SMRE, which is a company in Italy which designs and develops a drivetrain and driveline for electric vehicles. So electric motor, inverter for electric car and all the power electronics around that. Because all of these fields are related. If you look at it from a bird's eye view, technologically it's all storing energy in a car's battery or in a grid battery or in a solar energy storage, converting it into the grid or converting it from the grid into the storage, and managing that a regime of charging. From a bird's eye view, it's all the same. A UPS, of course, different markets, different challenges, slightly different technological solutions once you go a little bit closer. But from a bird's eye view, it's all energy. And the aim is to be a very large and leading technology provider for the energy world, the new energy. The energy world is changing. We are moving from a centralized grid where there are power generators and consumers to a distributed grid where everyone is going to be a prosumer. Produce and consume. There's going to be solar energy eventually on every building which will produce energy, and then you're going to have to store it locally and use it locally within the building or within the neighborhood. And EV cars are a great way to convert and store and transport energy. The grid is going
You think cars are going to go solar?
No, they don't need to go solar, but a car is an excellent energy source. It's also a very large energy load.
Right.
When we all understand that our industry is going to electric car. If everyone has an electric car, think of it this way. We now all finish work, we go home. Everyone around is home between 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. If we're all going to plug our car at the same time, the grid is not going to be able to sustain that. There needs to be a smart grid solution that manages that. And it can be time management. You charge at 2 p.m. and I charge at 3 p.m. And it can even be energy sharing. You have a very, very large battery. For now, we'll take energy from your car and move it to my car. Later, we'll complement back into your car. It's all the same. The grid is changing. There is a real grid and energy revolution happening now, starting now. I think we can be the leaders and the center and even the winners of this revolution.
Thinking back on your experience so far, what was the greatest burden, challenge that you guys had to solve in order to
That's
really...
a very hard question.
I know.
I must tell you, I know...
Thematically.
I know it sounds like I'm avoiding the answer, but which I'm not, okay? But literally and honestly, I cannot think of a single meeting in Solaredge where we ever thought about what happened. Maybe except for learning from experience, analyzing what went wrong, okay? You can find meetings where we analyze what went wrong in order so it won't go wrong again. I don't remember a single meeting where we analyzed what went right. We only look forward. I can tell you what's the challenges of the future, but what was the single biggest challenge of the past? Every day is a challenge of some sort.
The 5 years still here.
The 5 of us are still here.
And you haven't killed each other yet.
The opposite. The 5 of us are still here, all doing our original roles plus. So, we have much more people to manage. Okay, Solaredge is now, again, I like round numbers. It's not the accurate number, but it's close to 2,000 people. And spanning 25 countries, spanning different businesses. So all of us are doing exactly what we did before, plus, which means that each and one of us now has a staff. Okay, everyone is managing his own VPs that are responsible for various things, but all of us are still here. We see each other much less now. So from a company where the 5 of us sat in literally the same room, a single room, there are sometimes weeks before I see one of the other founders. There's much more management. As I said, the more we grew, we brought in professional managers. So sales, finance, operations are all organizations which are managed by real professionals that we brought in. We are self-taught professionals, but the 5 of us are still here, and we still like each other.
What was the moment where you thought, okay, this is going to be a big success?
First customer. There was a customer so first real customer, right? So we had a lot of customers and all of our very, very, very first customers helped us a lot in learning and understanding. But it's one thing when you have a teaching customer, maybe even here in Israel, that is willing to take a small system from you and is literally doing you a favor. Then the point where we had the first real customer, that specific customer was in France, that gets the first container, which I packed these inverters myself with my hands from the production line and installs them and has a few issues and asks a few questions and then says, okay, that was great. I'm going to order. I think first order from that customer was 2 megawatts of 2 megawatt peak of inverter. And that was like, wow, someone likes what we do. That was a real sensation where this can really succeed.
2 more questions,
Yeah.
and I'll let you go. What motivates you personally? You've done very well. The company is a wild success so far. If your career ended today, it would be a wildly successful career. Looking forward, what personally motivates you?
The amazing thing about Solaredge is that every 2 years, the company really transforms itself. So we're all doing every 2 years and sometimes even faster. So we're all doing just R&D, which was, I knew how to do R&D. We were doing R&D, 5 friends working together, buying components, used components sometimes because we don't have a lot of money. And then I got this challenge of doing business development and finding people that are willing to listen to us even, which was something I never did before, flying around and knocking on doors and convincing people to maybe sign an NDA or a design partner agreement. Wildly exciting for me because I never did it before. And of course, at some point it becomes boring. And then now we have real customers. Now we have to actually develop the marketing and the sales and how do we sell and how do we resell and how do we manage the pipeline of sales. Again, very exciting for me because I never did it before. And at some point we said, okay, that is working really great. Now we need to start building a global organization. Very hard thing to say, okay, we are now moving from I meet or the VP sales or someone here from headquarters meet every customer to a point where you take people abroad, you trust them completely, they meet customers, you just need to give them the knowledge and the tools how to sell, so how to build a global organization. Wow, exciting. I never did it before. To the point of mass sales and how do we become a corporate, to taking the company public, a process I never did before. Again, exciting. I learned a lot. Now managing the company as a public company. We are now at the phase where we are growing beyond solar. So we are now whole new companies that we added with one deal. And we need to bring them into the Solaredge atmosphere, and there are entities to integrate. And we don't want to break things that are working well there, so we need to because we bought them because they have real value. So how do we combine enough and combine in the right way automotive, electronics, and UPS and lithium-ion cells, which are sold not just for solar and storage, but for a range of. So it's very exciting now, this growth from a purely solar corporate to a energy larger corporate. So as long as there is something new and exciting for me, I'm happy.
What is the one question or the one piece of advice that you would give young entrepreneurs thinking about building their businesses? What's the one piece of advice that you would give them?
It's going to be 10 times more complicated than what you think. I cannot remember a single thing that was as complicated as I thought it would be, and most things were 10 times more complicated than what I thought it's going to be. The minute you realize that, the minute you can endure the long run, because it is hard. There are a lot of challenges. The minute you understand that when someone tells you, I'm going to buy, from that point to an actual order, there's an ordeal of something, and the minute everything is going to be much more complicated than what you imagine. The minute that sets in your head, everything becomes much easier.
Why has Israel been such a great incubator for entrepreneurs?
Because we are not afraid to make mistakes, and many Israelis have the self-confidence to skip the holes in their mental process, business plan. So we had no idea how are we going to build a manufacturing organization that can manufacture 1 million pieces a month, right? We never did that before. But we said we'll start and we'll learn and we'll bring professionals and we'll make mistakes and it will work. Same thing for we never did inverters. We'll start and we'll learn. The self-confidence that many Israelis have, the Yeh Beseder, on one end, and the basic willingness, that everybody hears and learns this from grade school even. He who doesn't make mistakes is the one that doesn't do anything. If you don't make mistake, it means that you didn't do anything. That is embedded to Israelis. We're not afraid of making mistakes because we are more afraid of not doing anything. That based on self-confidence, that's, I think, is the right combination.
Lior Handelsman, thank you very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. This was great. And I'm looking forward to hopefully continuing to watch how the company grows and really make an impact in this world.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Startup Stories from the Startup Nation. I'm the host, Yigal Marcus. The associate producers are Moshe Raps and Avi Maklis, and the senior research analyst is Lior Levin. If you have a startup that you think we should feature on air, please email me at yigal.marcus@bernstein.com or at startupstoriesisrael@gmail.com. No good startup in Israel is too big or too small. A big, very special thank you to my employer, Alliance Bernstein Investment Management and Research, who has been incredibly supportive of this initiative. And please share these podcasts with your friends, like us on Facebook, and please, please, please rate us on iTunes. Until next time, thank you for listening.